Okay, here's our Chapter 1, Quiz 1. It says dry erase review because that's what we did in class today, but we won't be doing dry erase in our video. Okay. The questions that you see on this video are going to be very similar to the ones you see on the quiz. The difference will be we use different numbers, but that's pretty much it. The expectations will be the same, the number of problems, the level of difficulty. That's the point of the review, is to make it close to the test so there's no surprises and so that you're studying the right things. Okay, so in the directions for the first section it says evaluate the following exponents by first writing out what it means. Final answers can only be left in the form of a fraction or a whole number. And I'm going to expand on what these directions are asking for a little bit here. So at our first problem, what you see is 4 to the 5th power. And you're given exponential form. Okay, we're given exponential form, which is what we've worked with a lot in the last few days. But last week, remember, when we were first starting exponents, that's when we were doing our expanded form, and that's what this long bar in the middle wants, is our expanded form. Okay, so 4 to the 5th power in expanded form be 4 times 4 times 4 times 4 times 4. Okay, and on the very last line is asking for standard form, which means you can type into your calculator 4 caret 5 and get the answer of 1024. Okay, that's our standard form answer. Our next problem, this is the one in this section where most students had the most trouble, and it says 5 to the negative 2 power. And most of you are thinking to yourself, oh, 1 over 5 squared. And that is, that's still exponential form though. Okay, and I know that that's still what's familiar to you because we've been working predominantly with the exponential form for the last 2 days, but we're in this section being asked to remember what we did last week with expanded form and to write this in expanded form. It's still going to be 1 on top, it's still going to be a fraction bar, but we're going to actually write out the 5 times 5 instead of leaving it 5 squared. And then standard form, we're going to multiply that, 1 over 25, and that would be my final answer. Okay, let's do that one more time. Let's make up another problem to go with this. 4 to the negative 3rd power. So in expanded form, okay, that would be 1 over 4 times 4 times 4. That's our expanded form. And in our standard form, it would be 1 over 64. Okay. Number 3, 2/7 to the 3rd power. Okay, 2/7 times 2/7 times 2/7. That's our expanded form. And if I multiply 2 times 2 times 2, or I can type in 2 caret 8, and I will get, or excuse me, 2 caret 3. I'm saying the answer instead of saying what you're typing in. 2 caret 3, excuse me, and you get 8. Okay, and then 7 caret 3, and you will get 343. You can also, if you know how to use the fraction keys on your calculator, you can also type this in and it'll get you 8 out of 43 on your calculator if you know how to do that. Alright, and the last one in this section, negative 5, 6 times. Don't forget the times dots in between each one. It is wrong without the times dots. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. Now, you're welcome to type this in. If you do, remember to put parentheses. And this is a negative sign, not the subtract sign. And you will get 16,000 or 15,000. Now, I can't do this in my head, and I don't recommend that you try to do it in your head either. Okay? 15,625. Now, it's positive. It is not negative. I just bumped the board a little bit there. Okay? It is a positive answer, and remember that's because we have an even exponent, which means I'll have 2 negative signs that make a positive, 2 negative signs that make a positive, and 2 negative signs that make a positive. So all of our negatives end up canceling each other out. Okay? Now, I want to go back to number 2 for just a second. It is possible for you to type into the calculator 5 caret negative 2. And the calculator will say 0.04. And while that is a mathematically true answer, the directions are specific. We can only answer fractions and whole numbers. So I can't put a decimal answer here. Likewise, if your calculator were to give you a decimal for this answer, 8/343, you're not allowed to get full credit for answering with that answer. You have to put the fraction answer. Okay, in this next section, this section is your gift. Because here what we're really practicing for the most part is calculator work. Okay, so you are allowed to just type everything from this section into your calculator. Okay, you're allowed to answer as fractions, decimals, and there's one that you could do in exponential form. So the first one you could just type in 5 caret 0, although I hope you remember that anything to the 0 power is 1. And 3 to the 3rd power is 27. But you could just type the whole thing and get 27 on your calculator and call it a day. The second one, okay, let's talk about this one because now it has negative exponents and immediately many of you are thinking of fractions. 1/3 squared times 1/2 to the 3rd power. Okay, and if you evaluate that correctly, 1 times 1 is 1. And then you can do the bottom. You can type that into your calculator. 3 squared times 2 caret 3. Enter, and you get 72. But you got a couple other options. In this section, you are allowed to answer as a decimal. That means you could just type this in. 3 caret negative 2 times 2 caret negative 3. So the alternative answer, this is what the screen looks like. Okay, now let's talk about this for a minute. This is important. It looks like just a really long decimal that's 0, 1, 3, 8, 8, 8, 8, 8, and then 9. And depending on the calculator you're using at home, you may see more 8s in the middle between the 3 and the 9. Depends on the kind of calculator you're using. But I need you to understand what's really going on here. What's really going on here is that the screen ran out of spaces to put numbers. And it rounded. This 9 is a rounded value. It's not really a 9. That's really, these 8s really go on and on and on forever. It's just that the calculator rounded when it ran out of space. So a better way to write this answer is when you do any repeating decimal, first of all, you have to know that that 9's not real, okay? And secondly, if you're going to do repeating, you only need one copy of the thing that repeats, and you put a bar over it, okay? Well, let's say you want to answer that as a fraction. If you have this on your calculator screen, you can type second and then the PRB button. Whoops, I wrote R first. PRB. If you look on top, it has F, arrow, arrow, D. And what that button does is it takes anything that's on your screen and converts it. So if it's a fraction, it'll make it to a decimal, and if it's a decimal, it'll make it to a fraction. So just be aware that your calculator can do those things for you. Okay? Either of these answers is going to be acceptable and full credit. The next one, we're just typing it in. Okay, so 7 squared. 7 squared times 2 caret 3 is 392. Just typing it in. And the last one, you could answer it two ways. This is one you could answer exponentially. If you remember in class that we could take our outside 3 and multiply it by this 2 and multiply it by this 2. So I'd get 2 to the 6th power times 3 to the 6th power. Or you could give the full answer by typing in exactly how you see it, including the parentheses. Don't forget the parentheses. So parenthesis 2 squared times 3 squared, close your parenthesis, caret 3. And you get 46,656. Again, both of these answers are acceptable. Now, I got to talk about something in the directions that was confusing. It sounds like you're allowed to answer all of these questions in any of the 4 ways the directions said. Like it sounds like you might be able to answer number 5 as a fraction, decimal, whole number, or number with an exponent. And that's not what the directions mean. It doesn't mean that you should or could try to put all of these answers in fraction form. It means that if you get a negative exponent and you want to answer it as a decimal, you can. Or if you want to answer it as a fraction, you can. You cannot take 27 and just decide you want to make it a fraction by putting a 1 on top. Okay, we don't do that. I saw that with several students in class today because the directions seem to make it sound like you could make anything you want into a fraction. Now, you can't do that. Okay, so I just want to make sure that's clear. So the answers you see here on the screen are the only acceptable answers for each question. So some of them have 2 possibilities. Some of them really just have 1. Okay. In our next section, I really want you to write down something. And if you memorize this information, you can feel free to write it down on your quiz tomorrow. Okay, so if it is a multiply problem, that means you add exponents. If it is a divide problem, that means you subtract exponents. If it is a power to a power, and I'll show you what that looks like in just a minute, that means you're multiplying exponents. Power to a power, remember, looks like you have a number. I'll use the letter N. You have some number, and it has an exponent. And then that power gets put in parentheses, and it gets a second exponent. Okay, that's when you'd be multiplying exponents. 3 times 5 is 15. Also, remember that any answer you get with a negative exponent gets made into a fraction with 1 on top and then the base or that number to a exponent, a positive exponent. I'll put P for positive up here. Positive exponent on top. Okay, so be careful of that. All right, so let's start these out. All right, number 9. Okay, 5 to the negative first power times 5 to the third power. So we're going to keep our base. Automatically write 5 on the line. Okay, this is a multiply problem, so I add my exponents. Negative 1 plus 3. Some of you, many of you, okay, many of you still have difficulty adding and subtracting with positive and negative numbers. And many of you don't want to use a calculator because you kind of feel like you shouldn't need to use a calculator to get the right answer. And I understand that. But at the end of the day, I want you to have the right answer on the quiz, and you're allowed to use the calculator. So I want you to use the resources you have to get the right answers. So negative 1 plus 3, if you didn't know that that was positive 2, please type that into your calculator. Okay? At least check that you're getting the right exponent. Okay? This is a positive answer, so I do not convert to a fraction. I'm only converting to a fraction when I have a negative exponent. Number 10. This is a division question. So I'm going to keep the 4, and I'm going to subtract. Negative 2, take away negative 3. Again, I know you feel like you shouldn't need to type this into the calculator and you should be able to do it in your head. I just want you to get the right answer at the end. So feel free to use that calculator. Type in negative 2 minus negative 3. If you really want a way to remember it without the calculator, well, keep in mind that a negative and a subtract cancel each other out and make a plus sign. I owe $2 and I have $3, so I have a 1. If you don't get a positive 1 exponent, you need to use some sort of strategy, a calculator or a strategy to know why it's 1. Okay, so that also is a positive exponent. I don't need to make a fraction. Okay, kind of looked like I might have to because these are both negative exponents in the problem, but once I did it, my answer has a positive exponent, so I don't make the fraction. Okay, number 11, this is one of those power of a power questions that I was talking about. So keep my base of 3. My exponent is going to come from multiplying negative 2 times 3 and getting a negative 6. This is one where I've got that negative exponent, so I'm going to need to convert that to 1 over 3 to the positive 6th power. And because my answer line is going to have 2 things on it, please use a circle to indicate which thing you want me to grade as your final answer. Number 12, okay, this is a division question. It's just set up in a fraction format. So I'll keep my base of 12. And then top, negative 2, subtract 4, my bottom exponent, and negative 6. Okay, I owe $2. I want to spend $4 more to buy, I don't know, a coffee at Starbucks or something like that. If that's the case, I need $6. Or the temperature is 2 degrees below 0 and the temperature falls or goes down 4 more degrees. It is now 6 degrees below 0. Bottom line, use a calculator if neither of those things make sense. And negative exponent, make the fraction, circle to indicate that's the answer you want graded. So, if you memorize this stuff right here, not copy it off your arm that you wrote it on there or a piece of paper or something like that. If you have this stuff in the box memorized, then tomorrow when you come in and take your quiz, write it down first thing in that bottom section. You're allowed to do that, but only if you have that memorized. You can't copy it off something. You can't copy it off your neighbor. If you have it memorized, you can write it right on your quiz, and that can help you to get those questions correct. Okay, next set. Okay, next screen. All right. This is a multiply question, so I keep my base, add my exponents. So that's a -7, 1 over 3 to the 7th power, because that's a negative exponent. Here's a power to a power. I have the base of 8. It has one exponent of 3, then parentheses, and another exponent of 2. 3 times 2 is 6. No negatives, so leave it as it is. Number 15, the base is 15. It's a division set up like a fraction. 9 take away 6 is 3. Positive exponent, so we don't have to make a fraction. Number 16, the base is 5. And here again, we have one base, 5, and it has 2 exponents. This is power to a power. So 3 times -2, we're multiplying, we get -6. But that's one we have to make our fraction out of. Oops, I forgot to circle up here. 1 over 5 to the 6th power. Okay, last 4. Number 17 has a base of 2. It's a division problem, so I will subtract. 3 take away 5 is -2. 1 over 2 squared would be my final answer because I have a negative exponent. Number 18, that's a multiply. Keep my base of 5. And then 2 plus 6 is 8. Number 19, some really important things to remember because you see a fraction there. It's a multiply problem. I will add 2 plus 6 to get an exponent of 8, but my base, 1/3, needs to be in parentheses. Fractions remain in parentheses to the 8th power. If you leave off the parentheses, just look at this for a minute without parentheses. Okay, without the parentheses, it's 1 to the 8th power over 3. Because the 8 exponent is not going to affect the whole fraction. I need those exponents so that the 8 goes to the whole fraction and not just the 1. That's how you know. Because it's possible to have a numerator that has or a denominator that has an exponent while the other one doesn't. Okay, but that's not what we want in this case. Same thing with negative bases. All right, this is a multiply question. I'm going to add 8 plus 4, but I got to get the base right. -8 is my base, and it needs to be in parentheses so that my exponent of 12, 8 plus 4, not only affects the 8, but it also affects the negative. Negative signs are separate from their numbers unless you put parentheses around them. Okay, one more item is, your quizzes are handwritten by you. So if you're looking at something like this, okay, that kind of looks like 57 to me. And if you mean 5 to the 7th power, make sure you make your exponent small, still readable, but small and high so that I can tell the difference between an exponent and a base. Secondly, with calculator use, so let's write this down. Exponent, small, and high. For your calculator work, okay, you got to watch out for typos. Because if you have something wrong on your paper, and the reason that it's wrong is because you mistyped something in your calculator, I have no way of knowing that. So before you press enter, check and make sure that everything you typed is what you want. Otherwise, a wrong answer to me is just wrong because I won't have any way of knowing why it was wrong. So just be really careful and and recheck your typing before you click enter, before you write down that answer. Okay? Good luck on the quiz tomorrow, and have a good day.